Hello, everybody. Welcome to Artist Corner. I'm your host, Nolan Brewer, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Christodoulou.
Good one. Hi, Nolan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show.
And yeah, if you're not familiar with his work, he's the composer behind Risk of Rain 2, Do It Yourself, and The Sea Will Claim Everything, right?
She will claim everything. Yeah, that
Okay,
that
cool.
was my first game.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today.
No problem.
My first question for you is, what are typically the first questions you ask yourself when you approach making music?
Oof. No hello or whatever. Like just straight deep into it. Okay, what are the first questions? I think that the first question that I mean, I don't ask it, like literally or something, but the first thing that you tend to think about is like, what is this music for? What's the purpose of this thing? Am I going to be writing for a game? I'm writing for a movie. I'm writing for just, music itself, like something standalone. So you tend to start from that, I think, and kind of figure out what does this music need to do like functionally, what's the mechanical purpose, so to speak. Because when you're writing for something, that is not a standalone composition, then definitely there's a reason for this music being there, and that's what you should probably be figuring out in like the the big picture of it, and like the detailed, the like the scene or the level or the boss fights, right? So you get into the nitty gritty. So I guess that's sort of where I start, and I tend to start with the big picture because I'd like to find more of like, figure out things that will work project wise, and then sort of narrow it down to this particular piece of music for this particular scene level, etc. So I guess, yeah, something like that.
You always get to see what the level looks like beforehand.
No, that's not typically what happens I mean, I don't know uh, I don't know what the typical thing is, but usually I very often write a lot of music um, for the project instead of, the level. And it will get uh, picked up either by the developers, or we will have conversations about it and sort of figure out where to put it. And or otherwise it might be, you know, uh, something that I've written will change because we need something for this specific thing and we don't have it. So I'll take one of the projects from the pool, so to speak, of the project and just say, okay, let's take this and make it exactly fitting for this particular need. Um, but there have been times where I wrote for a specific, level and stuff. And to be honest, it doesn't really affect me that much unless there's something very specific in the level that has to do with music itself, or it has to do with, the mechanics of it, like how it's going to work. But I don't tend to write, I don't tend to think too much about, okay, this level is, this and this and this and has this sort of aspects, and then I will use this, instrument or theme to represent, you know, X and Y and Z in the level. Because I tend to think more for the big picture. I like to write stuff that can work for the entire game, and then, I have this luxury of kind of, being able to place it at various locations without feeling out of place. And there's also something it's first question already going into a tangent, but I think that's kind of important. It's because that I have at this time I have a lot of uh, like empirical feedback, empirical data from players about how they tend to interpret game music. I mean, speaking for games in particular, but this also works in other like film music and theater or whatever. And the thing is that a lot of people, not a lot, almost everybody, tends to take things for granted. So if you walk into a level and a certain piece starts playing, they will immediately assume that this is very specifically happening uh, for this level. This music is particularly meant to be heard here. So they tend to, instead of trying to figure out if it fits or if it doesn't fit and things like that, and sort of dissecting, um sort of behind the scenes stuff of how it works and all that, and the meta, element of it, they tend to uh, try to make their own associations of why is this thing here and what is it trying to tell me. So whatever you do, the players will still figure out their own narrative of how this fits into this particular level, and that, to me, that is a very strong asset in the hands of the composer. This is something that you can really take advantage of, and sort of, it allows you many times to push your limits a lot, and write stuff that are not conventional or expected, and people will not have any problem with it. You can trust me on that, because I've done it many, many times. And they will find, especially the more offbeat or you know peculiar things get, the stronger the associations will be, because they will feel that this has to be something that it was meant to be like this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that weird. So, it will create stronger bonds between the people playing the game and listening to the music. It will make it, they will create, weirder narratives about it, and will remember it more vividly, and all that stuff. So, in that sense, that's why I think that there's a lot of uh, merit into writing big picture stuff and figuring out later when you're gonna put it, and let the players just like do their own thing, and you know let them figure out why it's there. It's going to be better than your justification. If I say, that, yeah, I use this pad here because the level was, it had a greenish color, and I felt that this kind of represents that, and it has like water trickling by, so I added like some like water effects. That's that's very trivial. It's like one-to-one comparisons that you're trying to make, and concepts that you're kind of like trying to approach and stuff. But you will never get to the level of dissection and invention that happens in the mind of the player on of why this is playing here and it sounds like this. So, there you have it.
Wonderfully said. Also, don't worry at all about going on a tangent because it makes my job a lot easier.
All right. Well, you're gonna have a field day today.
What's the difference between a song and a track, if there is any?
There's a huge difference. Track is like a generic term that we will use for any type of music, and if people want some sort of history, it comes from, like the music players of yore, like like let's say the vinyl player. It has a literal track on it, scratched by the original, when you're making the master and stuff. So there's a track, like like a train track or something, that guides the needle stuff, before the vinyl there was like other, like types of players similar to that would use tracks. um so that's where it comes from, like, this uh, your needle follows this track, and the weight bounces and moves up and down and sideways. It creates the music. So that's where track comes from, and it's a word used to represent any type of music at any given point. Song is a form of music. Song is something that, the easiest way to to figure out if something is a song is to see if someone is singing. Songs are sung usually, but sometimes you will not have a person singing. You might have a leading instrument singing, like the main melody. But the bottom line for if you want to get deeper into it is that it is a type of is a form. Usually we will say, like a pop song has, like a verse and a second verse and a chorus and then a verse and then a bridge and a chorus and a chorus and a so this is a form of music. We say sonata form, we say a symphony, we say like okay, this is a bigger form. Um, we say a fugue. So all of these types of music, they're forms. So, and the form is defined by, this thing will happen, this thing will happen, this thing will happen, and it gets into details depending on, what type of form it is, what kind of music we're talking about, and all that stuff. And that's a simple thing. That song is just a form. So usually when people, unfortunately nowadays, people say use the word song for any type of music. They will say song for the main theme in Star Wars. But I mean, okay, maybe you can argue that it's sort of like a song. It has like almost like a verse and a chorus, but it's not really a verse and a chorus because the chorus is the first thing that happens. Because you cannot say that okay, this is like a short intro and then dun, 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 dun. I mean, this is the chorus. So it's not a typical form because da 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 da. This is this a bridge? No. And then you get to analyzing and then you say, okay, this is theme one and this is theme two. So it's not actually exactly like a song. And I mean, it's a musicological answer, but it's the actual answer. So, sometimes I tend to avoid the word song because I really don't want to I know that I'm not gonna educate people, change people's minds, but some people have noticed that I use the word track or piece. I like the word piece a lot. um, so yeah, and there you have it. This is like a little music theory lesson for you, Adam.
Speaking of songs, what's the thinking process behind naming your songs?
I have no songs. So I name my pieces. Look, I mean, this is
I'll start saying pieces now.
okay. I appreciate it. Okay, so to me, let's just say that I don't have like a thinking process or anything like that that is like, I I just tend to do think about it. I really dislike generic stuff like, main theme or menu theme or whatever. Yeah, I d- I hate when people you just call their music like the name of the level that it appears or whatever. This is like it's just stupid to me. And the point is that what I feel very strongly is that the title of a piece is part of the music. It is part of it's actual part of the music. And in that sense, it's as important as, the tempo that I will pick, the time signature, the key, and the music itself, like the melodies, the harmonies, and all that stuff. And so I don't. It's not an afterthought for me. It's not like, okay, let's put something here because it needs to have a title or something. It's something that I tend to think about a lot. The process is different every time depending on, what I want to say with this title. What do I want to represent? Do I want to describe the piece of music? Do I want to paint an idea that you need to have in your mind when listening to the piece of music? Do I need to evoke a certain feeling that I want to, put you in a certain state of mind? It's all those different things, but I just tend to think about it a lot. And this is not uh, again, most of the times this is sort of happens on a project level. So what I will do is like I will write music and on parallel to that I will start thinking about potential titles. So I will have my notepad and start listing stuff down and trying to figure out titles and I will eventually scratch things off and say okay, this gets canned, this will stay. And then at the end I'm like sometimes I write something, I'm like, okay, from these 10 titles that I have here, this is definitely it because it just fits very nicely. So I'm locking it in. But sometimes I will end up with like, I have five tracks that are titled by the time they're finished, and five of them that are like, just numbered and they don't have a title yet. So I'm looking at my list and I'm like, okay, from the 10 titles I have left on my list, I need to find five that fit with these. And, I try to, pair them together as best as possible to, fit the piece, but also fit the grand scheme of things. So that's it's just, just a thing that I enjoy because I do enjoy checking out an album or something and seeing that, the titles say something, paint a picture, evoke something even before I push play, So
Yeah, I think titles are a lot more important than people might realize at first, especially when it comes to instrumental pieces.
yes, exactly. Yeah. If you're dealing with something that will not guide you through it, because if you have lyrics, they will usually, they will paint the picture for you, they will take you by the hand and say, "Okay, this is what we're talking about." But if you're not, and music is a very abstract art, and you can make all sorts of associations, and the listener's cultural background and current state of mind, or even the zeitgeist, either locally or globally or whatever, can greatly affect the way you interpret a piece of music. So having a title that sort of narrows it down a little bit to the degree that you want, because you might want to leave it open. It doesn't mean that you don't have to say, "Hey, this is about this." But at least set a little bit of a some framework that we're here and you can have fun with the music, but in this sort of space. So yeah, it is important. Yeah.
How early on do you start focusing on mixing when writing a piece?
Immediately, like it's from the very first instrument. I don't I For me, instrumentation, orchestration, and the equivalent of it in you know, electric and electronic music, or music that is happening in the DAW, which is mixing essentially. Because, if you're writing a piece of orchestral music, you're mixing it. When you say piano and mezzo forte, you're mixing it. That's what you're doing, you know? And when you have a hairpin and, have a crescendo, you're mixing it. You're literally mixing. It's orchestration, but you're mixing. Um, and you're mixing within a environment that is very established, but you're actually making mixing choices. So it's the same thing exactly for uh, when I'm writing in the DAW and I'm directly recording stuff or figuring out sounds. To me, uh, uh, a melody or a motive or something without its sound is half the job. I've almost never write a melody and a bunch of chords and say, okay, which instrument will say this, will sing this. I'm almost always starting with the sound and the instrument together. So even if I'm listening to sounds or I have a melody in mind, because I have improvised a little bit on the piano and I'm like, okay, this sounds good. Let's bring it into the thing. I'm immediately starting to think, okay, what is the sound and how it's going to sound like? What is the environment of it? What harmony will envelop it? And what is the sound of this harmony? And everything that I'm doing, I'm constantly mixing it. I'm like, okay, this will come here and will be this loud, and I will start figuring out my drum sound and you know, my guitar sound and my bass sound and everything like that. It happens parallel to the composition, and to me, it is part of the composition. That's why I can never, sort of like give my music somebody else to mix it. I'm very hands-on with that. So I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It is actually a very good thing because it's great to hand it over and have a fresh pair of ears that is also not attached to things, make some decisions for you. But I could never be able to have these be the final decisions because it feels to me that everything, like the the production of it is part of the music writing. So, I just this is just how I feel, and it happens at the same time with actually every note and every, figuring musically things out.
What would you say is the most important aspect of mixing?
I Mixing is something that I've, let's say, semi-conquered over a very long period of time. And I went through all the very typical notions that everybody gets, which is you technically tend to overmix stuff and have very bad mixes that are done on horrible speaker setups and horrible rooms that do not represent anything at all, but you feel that you know, you have a grasp of it, so you tend to make very wide decisions, and then sort of, go through my training mostly on my own music and just mixing and mixing and mixing, kind of fine tuning while I also fine tune my speakers, my room, learn to hear more of the details, understand concepts, like clarity and, you know, like where the low end sits and where the high end sits and where the middle, like the low mids and the high mids and all that stuff, and starting to hear them better and making these decisions and sort of understanding like the panorama of things and seeing like why this, panning works and this doesn't, and how it affects the balance and all that stuff. So, and there's like, it's like a thousands and thousands of little decisions that pile up to make a good mix. And I will say this, at the end of the day, good mixing to me is about good instrumentation and good arrangement. Okay, so if you have, if you're not clean and clear in your arrangement and you're not sure what is the purpose of everything in your piece and thus in your mix, then there's something wrong and this will not be mixed very well. So if you have like three things that are kind of, making up your, let's say, low mids, okay, which is a very particularly difficult space to occupy. Um, if you have three things that are filling this space and they're doing like harmony, okay, it's not like your main melody or something, it's just your harmony. If these things are not part of one sound and they create one single sound, but they are all doing harmony in their own different ways, this will be very difficult to mix because you haven't decided what is their role in the track, in the piece. You need to figure it out and either make this kind of look this. You don't need three different paths. It might, when you're writing music and you're filling things up, sometimes this sounds nice because you get a little bit of low end and your piece feels warmer and fuller and stuff, and it feels satisfying and you feel kind of like this, let's say, wall of sound pushing you. But at the end of the day, you don't really need it if you fine tune and refine your arrangement. So to me, a good mix starts from a great arrangement. It's if you have everything, if everything has its role, and this is where again I can go back to orchestration. And I think that if somebody is familiar with orchestration, with actually writing for an orchestra, an ensemble of any sort that is acoustic, and you don't have, you're writing on sheet music and you're making your mixing choices by just saying, deciding dynamics and deciding, playing techniques and stuff like that, then you realize how important this is, because you don't have the crutch of, yeah, well, if I have three cellos playing three different lines and they're sort of like that, yeah, okay, I can in the mix I can sort of, put one here or sit them apart or whatever, and but this won't happen if you're writing for something to be played in a room. You need to make these decisions beforehand. You either need to say, okay, you guys are gonna sit like that, or you're gonna play, but you're not. But again, if you have them playing together, it's going to be a waste. You know, you might want to create a nice counterpoint line or things like that. You know, and you need to refine it. And the same thing happens when you're writing electronic music or electric music, and or just something that is produced. You know, so it starts there. So I would say that the most important thing to give like a definite answer in the question, the most important thing of a mix is the arrangement.
Do you have any experience with the writing on sheet music?
For sure. That's how I learned to write music. I'm very much, you know, the academic musician. I started from very young age, conservatory. I went for piano lessons in my local music school, and we were very lucky that they had obligatory music theory lessons. So we started learning music theory almost immediately. And none of the kids liked that. They were, you know, they were very bored of it, and it took our Saturday morning, which was horrible. But I really found a lot of I found that figuring out how music works was way more interesting than, you know, not way more interesting, but equally interesting to, you know, learning how to play it. So these things work kind of hand in hand, and eventually I sort of moved out completely from training to be a better pianist into just getting into the nitty-gritty of music theory and all that stuff. And if you know, that would took me to, I mean, I was writing on sheet music all the time. Eventually I sort of moved and stopped writing by hand, but still writing sheet music, but directly on the computer. But yeah, my studies were then, you know, like Baroque music and, you know, and orchestration and composition, which was all done uh, on sheet music. So yeah, I mean, I haven't written properly sheet music for a long time because of just getting into games and sort of non-stop writing for games or films or whatever, which I don't find it necessary, but it's still something that's, you know, it's very dear to me. I'm actually looking forward to sort of getting back to it. It's a nice thing, and it's a different state of mind. You're making decisions a little bit differently, and it's also very, I think, it has a sort of, you know, to be writing music. I mean, you get a little bit of a feedback nowadays from the computer because, you know, you input a note and it will play it back to you with the sound approximating, you know, especially if you're writing something orchestral. I mean, it has the sounds. It's not going to sound authentically orchestral until you're actually getting very into it and making like a mock-up or something. But you are getting some feedback. I mean, you know, in the old times we're just writing music and kind of like playing it on the piano and thinking, okay, this is a violin, and this is a tuba, and this is like, you know, a French horn and an oboe or whatever. But there's something liberating about it to, you know, not focusing on refining the sound, just focusing on the notes itself and trusting that this will translate properly when people play it. And also then the back and forth with the actual people is amazing. You know, you will write a string quartet and get it to the people that will play it and will tell you, well, sorry, but this doesn't like sound very sonorous on the cello, or the viola doesn't really, I mean, you know, or you can't do that because you've written three notes, but we need to play those two notes on the same string, which is impossible, you know, things like that. Or, you know, maybe you can arrange this a little bit differently so we can have time to sort of adapt or change from pizzicato to arco or what, all of these things that happen, you know, in the reality of um, just music notation being played by actual people. So yeah, it's very cool.
You see yourself ever transcribing your video game music to sheet music?
If I have thought about it, or I've spent a little bit of time transcribing the original Risk of Rain. There are actual like you know, lead sheets that exist that I've made when I was done with that project. And these, I mean, if you get the album on Bandcamp, you can find them. Uh, and they do have a lot of details on. I mean, they have, main melodies, they have chords, they have a lot of info about the themes and all that stuff. I've done sheet music for a couple of pieces on Risk of Rain 2, the original soundtrack, the core soundtrack, which are complete scores, so to speak. They have everything, like the drums, the basses, the synths, like it's like a. But as much as I would love to have everything out there, I don't have the time to do it. And if I was, it might, if I would rather spend the time writing music than doing this. I would love to have somebody come and I would give them the sessions and say, do your transcriptions. I will check them. We can, do a little bit of a bounce. And, but I mean, there's not enough time for it. So,
Hmm.
it is what it is.
Who are some modern composers you think more people should be listening to?
Modern composers, as in the orchestral field, you mean, or in the games field, or?
In general,
Hmm.
anyone you're listening to.
I don't know. This is a question that is very much in flux for me because I always tend to I go through phases and stuff. So, like I was at a Kamasi Washington concert like a few days ago. And I mean, he's an amazing saxophone player, but also his compositions are great. So I would consider him a composer in that sense because it's not just his playing that it's admirable. Uh, Modern composers. I'm not sure that I can. I mean, I like a lot. I listen to sort of random things, and I don't tend to listen to modern music in the sense of like the music of right now too much. So to me, modern composers would be like, Arvo Pärt or Penderecki is, like a couple of people that I mean, they're 20th century and even 21st century composers. I mean, Arvo Pärt is still alive. Um, and I don't know. It's sort of a difficult question because I would have to think about it a lot. It's a weird. I don't know. Let's get back to that. I will give you some names because out of the blue I'm kind of blanking right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, take your time.
Just because if I open up my Spotify or whatever, mostly listening to I'm listening to a lot of 70s stuff right now. I'm listening to like Rush and Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is the phase I'm going through right now. So I'm kind of like in that headspace, It's and it's a bit, it's not. I would hesitate to say, go listen to a Rush record from the 70s
Mhm.
as a modern composer or modern music thing. So
Yeah, take your time. What books have inspired your music?
what works
Books.
or books? Okay, what books? Okay, so this is a great question. Because to me, it is more inspiring. Music, I get my music inspiration more from other stuff besides music, and books is definitely uh, one of them. Especially when I was younger, I used to read a lot of like Stephen King and Lovecraft, and I mean, I've read my fair share of like Agatha Christie and all that stuff. It's like great summer reading, when you're on the beach. Um, but I tend to grab a variety of things uh, just to I'm not gonna pretend that I'm like well versed in classics or whatever, but I tend to grab like a lot of. I don't have like my favorite genre or my favorite authors or my favorite. It's like just give me stuff. I also tend to read a lot of nonfiction. And speaking of which, one of my most influential books, I would say, in terms of music writing, and also took me in a very strange path. after I read it. It was called The Endurance, and it's a book by Alfred Lansing, if I'm not mistaken. Let's edit that if it's mistaken. But it's a book about a shipwreck in the Antarctic in the beginning of the 20th century. And it is an amazing book. It's a documentary book. It's not like a fiction thing. And it's amazing. It's amazing to see sort of the resilience of people, of humans, and it's a story that is truly unbelievable. And you will, I mean, if it wasn't so well documented and close to us, it would truly be unbelievable, I think. Um, but we do have the facts are there, and you can confirm them. And that book, I was reading it just before I started doing Survivors of the Void, which is coincidentally sort of related to this, the deep and the underwater element thematically. And that influenced me a lot because it put me a lot into that state of mind of being in the middle of, let's say, the sea and water, and in very harsh conditions, uh, and in a state of constant desperation, fighting, struggling for your life, and with every step, literally every step of the way, every minute of your day. And it really affected the way I was writing, I think. I mean, I can hear it now in the compositions. Um, if I could compare it to something, I would say, and it's not a coincidental comparison. It's very sort of almost literal comparison with like the music for The Thing by John Carpenter, which and I have a essentially I have a piece that is a tribute to John Carpenter in the in Survivors of the Void. And but what happened was that reading this book sort of opened my appetite for finding other books about ships and the open seas and shipwrecks and stuff. So I went into this kind of sort of path, which then it was really fascinating. I was finding book after book reading about such things. I read The Wager, for example, by David Grann, which um, he's the guy who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon. So that affected me in a way even beyond music itself, because it put me in this path, but it's also put me in the state of mind that has since then sort of affected the way I approach music in some ways. Because if you're, and I don't mean to say that you again it's not wise to try to find one-to-one comparisons and say that I've read this book and has made me write this melody. This would be, I think, wrong, uh, because that's not how it works. It's just that you're getting into a state of mind, and that it's unavoidable to uh, you can't not be affected by that. So in that sense, that's why I think getting info that is not music is very important, because if you're listening to a lot of music, you might be affected in a way that you will say, this is what's happening in music right now. So, let's see how this trend works and how I can incorporate it into my music. And I've done this a lot of times. And I think it's a good thing, to get a feel of what's going on and sort of see, you know, can I bring this into my own writing, and in what way? Uh, Or you can say, "Oh, that's a great bass line. I can write something like that." Or this is a great sound that they've made here. How can I get this sound and bring into my these are all valid things. Um, but this is, in a sense, a kind of one-to-one. So and it has value, but it's a very different thing to have this, to be just in a mental state and be writing under the influence of a book, or a movie, or even a conversation that you've had, So in that sense, I mean, I know that I'm not answering the question, what books, because to say what books, I would say that one of the books that have, influenced me extremely, especially during my adolescence and maybe, my early 20s and stuff. It's like The Long Walk by Stephen King, written
Mm.
as Richard Bachman at the time. Um, and it's definitely one of my favorite books of all time. So it's 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 impossible that it hasn't influenced me. But I can't tell you that here's, this little piece of music here. You listen, this is from the book. It's not. It's just that, it's part of me. So this is kind of, I think this is kind of how it works.
Hmm. Would you say that literature is underlooked nowadays?
What is underlooked?
Literature?
Oh, literature. These are this is a hard question to answer because I
Yeah.
think all art is underlooked these days. The fact that we listen to a lot of music doesn't mean that music is appreciated, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if it's I would say that for me there's an issue with people maybe not digging deep enough and sort of I think this overwhelming attack of pop culture and franchise culture has made has made it difficult because there's so much noise, has made it difficult to sort of be able to dig deeper a little bit. Um, so in that sense, I feel that all art has suffered to some degree. Um, it's hard to say, it's hard for me to answer if literature is underappreciated because in a way, I'm a person who reads constantly, but I'm not a person who follows the scene too much. I don't follow like, Instagrammers or, you know, like check out, who won this prize and that prize and, to figure out my next book. I sort of let it take me on its own path. I will get recommendations from a friend. I will read a book and see that, okay, this person has written something else, so let me check out this something else. I might find a reference somewhere and say, okay, this sounds interesting. Let me check this out, and I will. So I sort of go with my own flow. I'm in my own river and I'm just like, flowing in it. But because I'm reading all the time, I don't feel that, there's like a lack of reading in the world in the sense that I'm in this sort of space. But I guess maybe there is. It's really hard. I don't know. I have this feeling that I cannot verify or, justify or whatever. Just a gut feeling that books went through a bit of a crisis. Everybody was saying that, paper is sort of dead and, reading is like a little bit going under and stuff. But now I get the feeling that now people buy books and read a little bit more. It has gone a little bit up. That's the way I feel. I don't know. Maybe it's because, during the Christmas time, for example, the three times that I went into bookstores to buy gifts for people, there was literally like tens of people in line buying books. So I'm like, I mean, this looks like it's going okay. Whenever I go into a bookstore, there's like a couple of people there trying to, find something to read. So I'm like, okay, okay. Sometimes people buy, not the eclectic literature or whatever, but that doesn't matter because I've bought so many trash things so many times and I've enjoyed reading them a lot. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, if people, whatever you're reading, that's fine, And I think that reading is a gateway to reading. There's no better, like gateway drug to reading than just picking up any book. but the problem with the noise that I said before, it's like that sometimes you get to, you know, it might take at this point you might grab a comic book because you saw a Marvel movie and read a comic book. It will probably get you a very, very long time to read Watchmen, for example, you know, or From Hell, just to mention Alan Moore, a couple of Alan Moore books, um, because you have so much other things that pop culture will push on you. You know, you will get shown all these things first, and you have to dig deeper to find something that is a little bit let's say more refined or does things different within the art form or things like that. And it's the same with books, and it's the same with movies, and it's the same with music. I mean, as I said, people listen to a lot of music statistically, but most of it is just background noise at this time. You don't tend to listen and focus on what you're listening, or discover things. You're mostly kind of going with the flow of a pre-made playlist. So, and it's obviously not all people, but just this is kind of like painting a broad picture now. So,
Would you consider making money a skill on its own?
unfortunately, it is. Uh, I have never thought about it as a skill that I need to develop. I have thought a lot about my music in terms of ownership and, you know, being my own music, but I've never thought about it in the sense of this is going to make me more money. I've thought about it in the sense that this is what I've created and it's my legacy, and it needs to be mine. Other than that, I have not thought about it. I've never thought that music making will, give me a lot of money. And I never thought that it will give me not a lot of money. I've considered neither factors. I thought I want to write music, so I will write music because there's no other way. I need to do this. And I was lucky that it got me to a point where I could make a living from it. I mean, that's the degree to which I think about it. I've never thought about, okay, I have like a bunch of money set aside. I need to like invest and do something to, make more money, or, I need to think about how to better monetize my music, or how to, make more money somehow, or, uh, yeah, for example, if I wasn't so invested to making money, I would sit down to create sheet music and sell it. And instead, I've spent the time preparing it for Risk of Rain 1, and I'm giving it away with the album, which could easily be like a digital download somewhere and get me money. I don't know. It it is a it is a skill, but it is a life that I don't want to have. I don't want to
Yeah.
be focused on that skill. It seems so boring. People who just focus on how to make money, they're boring people. So I don't care.
It's not what matters.
I mean, money matters in the material sense. We need to eat and have a roof.
Yeah.
This is important. We need to educate ourselves. We need to have health. We need to have health for our loved ones and our children, and education and roof and food. And this is important. So it's not being focused on making money. It's not unimportant. What is boring is this passion with how I'm going to make my money make money.
Yeah.
And if your job is for money to be making money, this I think this is a boring job, and honestly, it's a bit of pathetic. If I'm, I'm if I'm at a dinner table with one of those people, I'm like, there's nothing. We don't have any common ground because your passion is stupid. It's like not. It's nothing, and it works only within this exact framework of society that we have built. It's not going to work on the next society and the next evolution, you know. So it's, I mean, you know, if you think about Star Trek and the famous kind of clip about money is unimportant in our society, we don't, you know, this Picard's sort of speech, and I don't remember the episode, but it's very easy if you Google, like, you know, Star Trek money something, you know, you will find it. Uh, but this is to me, you know, kind of the aspiration for the future or something that would everybody has what they need to make a living so that they can do what they want, and this will make us better as a society, you know, help each other and do what we really are passionate about, which there's no way that, you know, a person grows have you ever seen a child be passionate about money and making money? Stupid. I mean, come on.
So from what I understand, it's not that it doesn't matter, it's just not what you should be focusing on.
Look, it's a hard question because I cannot say to somebody, don't be focused on making money, because it is important. You need to live. This is the most important thing that you can do is survive. This is how, you know, society works. So it's not that you shouldn't care about it and be, you know, like uh, if because if you starve to death writing music in a basement, then that probably no one would hear because you don't have a way to, you know, you don't have the energy or means to put it out there. Then what's the point of that? You know, it's also a wasted life in some sorts. You know, you have pursued your passion, but you haven't survived enough to give it to the world. So it's just that, you know, making money for the sake of making money, I think that's a little bit boring and trivial. If let's say this, that if you want to do something, especially in the creative field, just because you want to make a lot of money and become rich, that's the wrong thing. It's not that you shouldn't focus on how to make money from your passion and your job. Is that if you're doing creating something artistic just because you want to be rich and famous, then it's probably not a, you know, it's something that it's kind of all right, whatever.
How often are you actively listening to music compared to just having it in the background?
Listen, when I was young, I would come back from school and sit on my stereo, put on my headphones, grab the CD, and go through an album from the first track to the last track. I've never, the idea of a hit song or a single never occurred to me until I was like 25. Because I would put an album and listen to it straight and would go through the booklet and read the lyrics and read, you know, what sticks the drummer was using and who were they thanking and everything like that, you know, like and this is how I used to listen to music. I'm not gonna say that I do this to that degree anymore, but I do tend to uh, listen to a lot of music when I'm running. So I will go out running and put an album out. And there are two modes that I go through. One is that I'm going to, let's say three modes. One is I will go listen to a classic album in the sense of classic for me, you know, one of my, you know, beloved ones that I will just, will, I'm safe within that because I know it very well and just takes me. I will listen to my own playlist that I have, which is at this time is like 12 hours of completely random stuff,
Hmm.
but that I've picked that this is a good running song. You know, this is a good running. It will take me, it will drive me. And then there's mode three, which is discovery, which is like I'm okay. I don't know this Miles Davis album too well. And let's run on Bitches Brew, you know. Let's run on Kind of Blue. Let's put Charles Mingus and groove and do a cool run with that. And if the album clicks, I will sort of get it into rotation, listen to it one more time, listen to it one more time. And because I'm usually doing something that is long and I'm running for a long enough time that will cover the entire album, unless it's a very long one. Uh, that's usually where I tend to do my album listening in my proper focused listening because I don't need to think about much else. I'm just running and the music plays, and I'm sort of, getting that uh, deep into my brain, so to speak. I'm not going to say that it's easy to sit at home anymore and put music on, and that's difficult for many reasons. A lot of work. I have a daughter, which makes it next to impossible. But I do listen to a lot of music with her in the car if we're driving somewhere. Um, but I tend to use the radio a lot for that. Um, and it's more classical music, so that's kind of like it, it's deep focused listening in a sense, but it's not, a straight album. It's like, I will listen to a show that plays usually classical music or something like that, just because I want her to kind of get into this sound. Um, so that also benefits me because I'm listening to classical music again more and more. Um, but yeah, I think that's how I consume my my proper consummation of music happens during my runs nowadays. It's I mean maybe when I retire or something, I will just, go back to just sitting there and maybe with a glass of, whiskey or something. I don't drink whiskey, but, whatever, this kind of sophisticated, I will have my listening spot in the house and just put on the CD and do the thing again. But
Do you ever get inspired by music from where you live?
oh yeah, all the time, all the time. I tend to listen to uh folk music, let's say, maybe not for lack of a better term. I think it's okay, folk music. So yeah, I do get
Mhm.
inspired by it. First of all, it's a huge inspiration in terms of rhythm and meter, because we tend to write, we're not on the Western side of things. So we don't use a lot of 4/4 and I mean we do use them, but even in 4/4 and 3/4 and stuff, we tend to have like a bit of complicated uh, metric denominations even within that. So a lot of the dances are 7, they're 9, they're 13, 11, all that stuff. So I do love that, and I think that is very inspiring. We'd also have, we go beyond the minor and major and the all the you know your Dorians and Phrygians and Mixolydians and all that stuff. Because we have a lot of random sharps and flats. So like Arab scales and uh, augmented seconds and all that stuff, which is certainly very, very influential and inspiring. So yeah, I'm not uh, ethnomusicologist or anything. I don't
Mhm.
spend my time analyzing folk music, but it is there. It is everywhere in my ears. Even in the pop music of our time, it is hugely influenced, by Eastern stuff and all the Greek stuff and all that stuff. So it's you can't avoid it, and yeah, it definitely goes into my own music making for sure.
If you feel comfortable sharing, what do you have fun doing outside of music?
Outside of music, um, mostly what I want to do is relax at this point, because it has been hard, especially let's say the last 5 years and stuff. So I don't tend to, I'm not a party animal by any means. I just want to
Mhm.
relax. I want to see a good movie. I want to go out and eat something nice. I enjoy just going out and drinking a cup of coffee and reading my book. Um, I do like running a lot. I love to run. I don't know. It's very I really enjoyed like hanging out with friends from school and stuff when I was younger. I found somehow a little bit of time to play games again in the past few years. Not a lot. I don't play a lot of games because I don't have time. But I have somehow found the time to play a little bit of, some, let's say, newer games because sometimes when you're really, really tired and you don't have a lot of time, you have like, 1 hour after the kid has gone to bed, you might want to just do something that will not occupy your mind too much. So I might, launch some game that I know very well so that it doesn't require any much of me. I'm just, going through the notions and I'm enjoying the nostalgia of it all. But I have found a way to uh, play a couple. We just finished Dredge like
Mm.
literally yesterday, which was enjoyable. It's also Lovecraftian to some degree, so we had fun with that because it's something that I still enjoy a lot. Um, I don't know. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I tend to play some, let's say, newer but classic adventure games. Classic in the sense of like classic in their form, not classic in the old-timey. Um, yeah, and I'm really not sure. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Um, yeah, I would say that the most enjoyable thing for me to do is like have a good movie that I can sort of puts me in the state that I leave my phone aside and I can just watch the movie. That's one of the most enjoyable things that I can do now for relaxation and kind of, yeah.
Hmm. What was the most recent movie you watched?
Mm, we watched a movie called Companion, um,
Mm.
which
Sounds
is
familiar.
it was very interesting. It's kind of like uh horror, let's say. It's an interesting movie because I want to be very, very careful not giving anything away. I think that
Mm.
what should people do? They should watch the trailer. It's look, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the girl who's the star of the film. The co-star is Jack Quaid, who is the guy playing in The Boys, like the main guy who is not like the
Mm.
Lord of the Rings guy. I'm blanking out on all the actor names. Anyway,
All good.
uh, and the girl is the one of the two girls who also played in Heretic, if people
Mm.
saw that movie recently. Um, and what I would suggest is that people go watch the trailer because unlike a lot of trailers at this point, it is very well made. It's very carefully made. So go watch the trailer, and if that intrigues you, go watch the movie. And I'm 100% sure that you will enjoy it. So I would really suggest this. It's not The Godfather or whatever.
Mm.
It's not like a masterpiece, a modern masterpiece, but it's first of all, it's an original idea. So for me, that when you have a movie that is an original idea, it starts from a 5 out of 10.
Mhm.
It can't bounce below 5 because I'm so tired of this like Marvel bullshit that we get 100 times every day that and that I'm just
Yeah.
exhausting. It's literally exhausting, has destroyed cinema. So uh, it in that sense already you're a winner. If you have made an original movie, you're a winner in my book, even if it's crap.
Mhm.
So but this is not crap. This is a legit good movie, I think.
Do you see yourself composing for more films in the future?
Um, yes, and I think what I would like to do at this point, you're catching me in a weird state
Mhm.
professionally now because I've in the past couple of years I've been doing a lot of sound design work for short films. Started with a couple of friends of mine that I've met here, like this sort of like let's say new generation of Greek film directors, and sort of kind of went into that scene accidentally almost, just because I knew some people. And this have sort of turned into a proper profession. So been doing this for a long time now, kind of like started from very, very short student films, now moving into like still short but non-student films. And this is something that I enjoy a lot. So I'm enjoying this transition because it's also very different, left brain, right brain thing, which is like I never remember which one part is like the creative and which is the,
Yeah,
the
me too.
the problem. Yeah, and I don't care because it's also bullshit. But
Yeah.
in kind of like in a, in a way, um it does put me in a very different state, and it requires very different sort of calculations and problem solving from me, which when I write music I find that it's very, very hard to write music. And what I usually tend to describe to people is that writing music is a very difficult job that I hate, that is very rewarding at the end. Once you've completed and you've written the piece, it's very rewarding. But it takes a lot of you, and it's something that I really dislike. While in the, I mean, this is, I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, but to paint a picture, but doing sound design is something that I'm having a lot of fun during making it, because it requires very different things. You have a scene, you need to, set the sound, you need to, and you can get a lot of creative input into that on how the sound will work, but it's still a different thing than, composing. So I'm enjoying this a lot. Writing music for films, I would say that it's something that I definitely would like to do more, and I can see myself sort of, getting into this groove again in but it would be more interesting to me to write music for this young generation of filmmakers instead of, you know, becoming a big name or something. I feel more at peace and comfortable just writing, nice music for somebody who's young and, kind of up and coming and has a lot of passion. And I'm kind of a vampire in that sense, because, when you're working with a team that is like a bunch of like 30-year-olds or 25 to 30 or 35 even, I'm still, 10 years older than them, and I'm kind of getting there. I'm a vampire getting their, life essence, and it makes me younger. Um, but I would say that the thing that I immediately want to do is write music for myself. So this is like my next sort of, this is where I want to move right now. It's like I've written enough music for other people, and I've joined it a lot, and I'm not gonna stop doing it, but what I want to do is write music for myself. So just, either on pen and paper or in the computer, whatever, but be music that is just for music's sake and to express my own self instead of, do something for someone else's project. So yeah, that's where I'm at this point, I would say.
How important are breaks when making music?
How long what?
How important are breaks
Oh,
when making music?
how important are breaks? What do you mean? Do you mean like big picture breaks, like, taking a month off, or, you know, spending 4 hours on the computer and saying, let me get a break to reset myself or something? I mean, every both of them are important, but there's like the small thing of, I need a break just to stretch my eyes and my ears and my feet, um, which is very important. But the bigger picture thing, yeah, for me, I do take long breaks. If I finish a project, I'm kind of overwhelmed because it usually takes a lot of work, and especially I tend to compress work as I go. So, the more we're closing in into a deadline or where I want to have it done, the more work tends to pile up. So the last month or weeks of a project will be very, very busy and intense. Um, so then I will definitely need a break. Sometimes it might be, like a couple of weeks. Sometimes it might be a month. Sometimes I might not have that luxury. But, if I can, I will try at least arrange something that is not as intensive to be the next thing. Um, but other people might not feel the same way. For me, because I do get quite intense, uh, I do need the break. I do need the break. Yeah. What I really enjoy is if I'm going from one project to the other and they're entirely different projects. So, writing completely different music and, different instruments or, a very different approach. And to be honest, it's one of the things that burned me with Risk of Rain, because doing, practically four Rain games in a row, like two and the remake, the return and the first DLC and the second DLC practically in a row without anything else in between, almost nothing else, or at least some things that are where instead of being one and then the other, it was in parallel, which was even worse because not only I had to do the Risk of Rain, I had to do another thing on the side. So that was really, really hard. And that is something that I needed like a very clean break from. So yeah,
Are there any new styles of music you see yourself making?
I've never thought that there is a style of music that I won't make. Not that I'm gonna pursue making all of the style of music, but in the sense that I don't, I've never felt that you need to compart, ah,
Compartmentalize?
compartmentalize. Yes, the music in that sense. I find that I write better within certain styles because I'm more familiar with them. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to become familiar with other styles, because it's also, I think one of the things that every musician has to some degree is that they have this uh, inquiring mind and they have a passion for learning new things. So you know, if something challenging comes up, it's interesting, it makes it's rejuvenating. Um, and that, unfortunately, that was going to be the the project that I was working on with Hopu, which got canceled in the end of the day. But it was going to be very different and very like a new style of music for me. But I don't know. I tend to feel very like I will listen to something, especially from like different cultures and stuff, and I will say, "Oh, this is great. How can I do something in that vein that is not copying this style, but what are the elements that make this style unique, and how can I bring them into my own music?" So, these are important things, I think. So, uh, for that reason, I tend to be very open to different styles and even new styles that are happening in the now in the here and now, like new tendencies in jazz. You see it a lot in instrumental music, like especially the rock field. You see it a lot. Pop music, of course, gets reinvented a lot. And sometimes these are mere production things. you know Technology advances and these you know go back into the music. Sometimes it has to do with playing. We see, guitar playing has advanced a lot over the last 20 years. It's very different now. um, but other instruments too, even piano playing, you know, music does, update. So it's interesting to keep up and see what's happening and then see it how it applies in all the different styles. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not I'm never ruling out anything. I everything can the thing that I want to do is have take things from new styles or different cultures or whatever and have them be mine, to reinterpret them as mine, you know. And I think that's the important thing because if I go and write in the style of something, then this is what ChatGPT does. And this is not interesting to say that, I will write in the style of uh, whatever that of is, a person, a culture, or and this is not very interesting. To take it and make it your own, this is, I mean, this is what human art is, in a sense. Wow. Yeah. So, which is also a different tangent, but why I literally hate the term cultural appropriation. I think this is one of the stupidest things people have said. There's no such thing as cultural appropriation. It's just
I
human
don't know what it
advancement.
means.
It's bullshit. It's like a bullshit term that that thinks of humanity as people in boxes that cannot interact with each other. That's all that it means. It's just a stupid thing. It's a very
Mm.
stupid thing from ignorant people who don't understand how humanity works.
Would you say there's a difference between style and genre?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure there is. I mean, it's funny because I was watching a video by Adam Neely yesterday, and it went into this kind of the laws of genre, which was a very interesting segment of the video, and how every genre has its own of kind of ethical rules of law that you can do this, you cannot do this, and there's a kind of like a line that you can sort of walk in and be more illegal, so to speak, as you walk along the line. Yeah, I mean, there's if heavy metal is a genre, there's so many styles of that, and it's not. I'm not talking about the sub-genres of like there's thrash metal, there's black metal, there's power metal, there's whatever, but there are you can say that. I mean, there's there's Black Sabbath and there's Iron Maiden, and they are heavy metal, but they have very different styles, you know, because style comes down, I think, to sort of the personalities and the type of playing of the musician and the musician within the group. They develop this style, and but but genre works in a more kind of grand scheme, and you sort of not decide, but you sort of fall into a specific genre from like sort of naturally by choosing your playmates and your bands and the style that you and the genre that you enjoy or the influences that you have and all that stuff. But then your style sort of develops. It's part of you. It's part of specific influences within the genre, the people you bounce off of, and all those things. So I would say, yeah, this is the difference between them. It's kind of, style is not a category of genre, but it is a different category within each genre.
Mm.
And also it's a bit more loose, I would say, because style, I mean, you can say that cool is style, and you can have cool within a lot of genres of music. So it's a little bit of a, you're getting into or sort of borderline philosophical uh, questions now.
Those are the ones I love the most.
I mean, they're fun. They're fun to think about. But but let's say, for example, if I take my own music, okay, and if you listen to the Risk of Rain 2 soundtrack, which is a lot of music in there, I don't even know what genre it is and what style it is. I can tell you this that the style is Christodoulou,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure what the genre is because I mean there's definitely a lot of pop, there's definitely a lot of heavy metal, there's definitely a lot of rock in there. Is there a little bit of jazz? Not too much. There's a lot of electronica though. There's like, you know, especially early like 70s electronica. So all these are different genres technically, but they coexist on the same album because of the style, and because of the person who has curated them. Uh, so in that sense, style goes on top of genre in this particular occasion. But there are other times when you might, as I said, with like, Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath or, Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, for example, hard rock stuff that then you have the style there, it's complicated. It's a
Yeah.
complicated thing. They're both kind of talking to each other. These two, the Venn diagram is it's a Venn diagram that it works in multiple dimensions. It's not just, you know, it's
Mm.
not a two-dimensional thing that it works like that, or one circle is within the other. It's like if you look at it from the fourth dimension, it might be outside and enveloping the one might be enveloping the other, but it looks different, projected on a 2D plane, whatever.
Speaking of dimensions, would you consider music a 3D space?
Ooh, a 3D space. I mean, it is a 3D space in the sense that it has the dimension of time, you know, and it has the dimension of, you know, frequency, like the low and high frequency, and then the time, and it has the dimension of depth if we're talking technically in the sense of where you place your music left and right and back and front using reverbs and things like that. It literally has a third dimension now in the sense of, Dolby Atmos and surround sound and all that stuff. But if we see it strictly philosophically, I don't know if dimensions would be the word that I would use
Mm.
to describe music. If I would use a metaphor that would deal with dimensions. Uh, I don't know. It's a difficult question to answer. I haven't really thought about it like that, in sort of defining it in a you know uh, within a place, within a space. Uh, so I don't know. I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass on this one.
It's interesting too, because I feel like if you ask different people that question, you're gonna get different answers each time.
Yeah, because it's how you approach it. If somebody's very technical about it, you might get into the nitty-gritty of how you place instruments within the room and you're mixing and you're doing stuff and yeah, the Dolby Atmos and or in stereo and everything like that. And then and up down if you consider, like high frequencies, low frequencies, or how you place them within your ear. I mean, you can be enveloped by music. And in that sense, it is three-dimensional because it can, you know, it can physically and mentally envelop you. So it has the three dimensions that are enough for our human understanding to be surrounded by music, metaphorically speaking, also. Um, but but I don't know if in a pure philosophical or metaphysical way, it's to me the important factor is time, because you take a painting and you look at it, and while there's some guidance about it. The painter might be able to guide how you look at the painting with how they have, drawn the light or axes and lines on the painting and, where they have placed the objects within it and kind of guide in the way that you might take it in. It is also a static thing that you can sort of, it exists instantaneously. but music does not exist instantaneously. You cannot, you know, you have to start listening at the beginning. I mean, obviously you can jump at a place if you're, if you're taking a needle or you're using a digital workstation, whatever. But that's not the point that we're discussing now. We're thinking about, listening to a piece of music. It starts and it takes you through a specific journey, and it has its ups and downs, and so in that sense, it's more like a flow. It's more like a line that's being drawn while you're listening to it than something that exists uh, spatially. So I don't know.
Hmm. I think the way that I think about it is that it's a timeline in a way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair because yeah, because the how the music flows is so important. That's why it's important to, you know, like a vast majority of musical decisions is about how time flows, You're writing a melody, but if you're using whole notes, or I mean, you can have the same notes, the exact same notes, and change the values of the notes, and it's a entirely completely different melody that says an entirely different thing. If I change the values, and I'm not saying, take the eighth notes and make them all whole tones, because it just lengthens the thing. But if I change a few of them, make some of them triplets, and change the comparative, value of the note, then you have a different melody. So in that sense, that's where time comes into plays a huge factor, is a huge factor in music. So yeah, I would agree with the timeline, yeah, thing.
How important would you say silence is in music?
As equally important as anything you hear. I mean, all art is about contrast. You know, if you don't have contrast, then what are you doing? It's not you have. I mean, a blank canvas that you present as art is okay. You can sort of postmodernize it, or you can be like I don't know, a Fluxus artist or Dada. But I mean, cool. It's a cool story, but yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I understand we've done this under a very specific historical and political context, and there was a point at which it was done. But the reality is that art is about contrast a lot. It's a huge factor. I mean, it's not only about contrast, but without contrast, you can't have dynamics. You can have if you don't have ups and downs and stuff. And yeah, and you sometimes you just need to shut up and be sort of like, so yeah, it is very important. It is very important. And it's also because, when you're singing a melody or something, when you're talking, you take breaks to breathe, to emphasize, to, to frame your music within a specific sort of, in a specific way, to give it, to shape it in some ways. So it's the same with music. You can't have like a melody just running and running and running and playing all the time. You need to sort of take a take a breath once in a while.
Yeah. That goes for other things in life too.
For sure.
That's something I need to get better at personally.
I mean, a lot of people struggle with this. I mean, if we're talking about life, yeah, it's something that a lot of people struggle, but it's also something that I think you learn. You sort
Mm.
of, some you we all begin life restless, and we appreciate breaks more as time goes by, and also as we get more tired, because I mean, I had different strengths when I was 20, and it's not different now. So
Mm. Yeah. I think I just need to appreciate the time I have now then. Is there anything you can talk about and any upcoming projects?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm working on a couple of short films now. We just mixed one and we're working on another one, but these are not things that, people will get to immediately see because, they will run their festival course and might eventually end up somewhere online and I might be able to share them. But most of these things, they tend to remain underground and stuff. But our next big project, so to speak, not so to speak, it is a big project, but it's kind of we're working with my friend Jonas Kiradziz, and we had done an audio drama. I mean, he's the developer, the person who has written the very first game that we talked
Hmm.
about in the beginning, The Sea Will Claim Everything, and we've remained friends since then. We did an audio drama called Gospels of the Flood, like a couple of years ago. I think it's like 3 years now. And now we're working on our next audio drama, which is very different from Gospels. It's going to be like a full cast of characters. We have like the major cast, and then a lot of kind of satellite players coming in and out. And so we have finished recording the actors, and we're now in the process of editing and the setting up and editing the voices for the episodes, so setting all the pros, and then we're going to do sound design, and then we're going to do music. I mean, that that falls on me pretty much. So but we're in the process of doing that, and this is going to be a sort of mystery show, almost like a police procedural, but it gets a little bit more intricate than that.
Hmm.
And then we're gonna have 10 episodes of that they're gonna, they're going to build upon each other and create a bigger narrative and a more kind of complex and um, uh, bigger story. And I don't know, we're hoping that this will be something that we can show uh, this autumn, hopefully. But we'll see how it goes because there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of work to be done. So we'll see. And this is going to be season one, and hopefully we're gonna get to do season two and eventually maybe season three. That's sort of what we're looking for right now. We're not, 100% sure how it's going to go, but we're really excited because having recorded all the actors and now setting up the episodes, we are very happy with the results that we're getting already just by setting up the voices. So it we're actually truly excited about this right now because we started to see the potential because we have the scripts that Jonas has written. He went and recorded and directed all the actors and stuff, but a lot of the actors are recorded just, everyone just, sends a recording or we do a Zoom sort of direction stuff and they're isolated stuff. And then when you start building it inside the DAW and start to see how it all clicks together, if it works, it really something magical tends to happen. So we had this experience to some degree with Gospels, but that was just one actor and it was very exciting. But now that we have a lot of, dialogues and it's literally like a movie without a picture.
Hmm.
So it's really exciting for us right now. We hope that it will turn out nice and people will enjoy it. But I mean, it's not. We're very aware that it's not going to be like a huge project that millions of people will listen to, but that it's something that we're very passionate about, and we hope that will resonate with the people that do listen. So yeah, that's my big thing going on right now.
And where will people be able to check that out?
Where you mean?
Yeah,
Or what was oh yeah, when the time comes, it will just be a podcast. So I will obviously announce it on social media and upload on YouTube and stuff, but wherever you get podcasts, it will be there. We
awesome.
don't can't announce anything because I don't have a title or anything yet, so I can't tell you. And it's still a long way to go, but I will definitely share it enough. And we also hope to
do some festivals with it, and because there are now podcast festivals, so you can do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can show stuff, and they are dedicated
Hmm.
festivals for subgenres of podcasts too. So we're hopefully gonna play it at some more genre oriented festivals like
Hmm.
horror and mystery and things like that. Supernatural, maybe. I'm already teasing a lot of stuff.
I didn't think about that. There were genres for podcasts too.
I mean, podcasts sort of started with this kind of being essentially a radio show that was just recorded and exists. But at this point, if you look into narrative stuff and audio dramas, there's so many things. Some of them are really great, uh, and sometimes it's much better listening to a great narrative podcast than watching a bad movie. Because also because you tend to listen. I mean, especially for a narrative podcast, you need to put on earphones because there's a lot of sound design and details. It's not just a couple of people talking, which you can have your phone here and just have it playing, and it's fine. You don't need to, listen to the reverb or anything. But yeah, for the narrative things, because you tend to listen to them on headphones, it gets much more immersive. So this is something that we're enjoying a lot, and we're kind of it's also a lot of fun to do the sound design, even for even choosing the right reverb for the voices, or panning them in a way that it appears that they're in a room or moving or shuffling around or doing things. It's cool. It's an interesting thing. Sound can be very powerful for to give you a very very clean visual image, even if you're not looking at actually something.
Hmm. Are there any podcasts that you'd recommend?
Uh, I'm
I
going to
actually,
recommend.
oh, sorry.
I don't want to recommend any narrative podcasts at this time because I'm not currently listening to anything that I particularly enjoy. I mean, a lot of people tend to recommend Welcome to Night Vale, which is a classic now, I guess.
Hmm.
It is a very peculiar one, though. It's a podcast that is, I think, a bit hard to get into, especially now there's so many episodes. I've stopped listening a while ago, so it's like saying to somebody, "Yeah, you should get into One Piece." Okay, yeah, but they're like 30,000 episodes. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, what sort of investment are we talking about? Uh, but um, I mean, obviously, listen to Gospels of the Flood, which is our podcast. But I would say if a podcast that I do enjoy a lot right now, and I'm sort of listening fanatically, is Blank Check, which is a podcast about movies. And it's Griffin Newman and David Sims. It's the one is an actor and the other one is a film critic, and they pick a director and they go through their filmography and they analyze each movie. They talk about not analyze. They talk about each movie for
Hmm.
every episode, and they have a lot of nice banter between them and with their guests and stuff. And it's what I enjoy about it that you do this deep dive. It's not like, your bad movie podcast or sort of random, the action movie podcast or the movie style X podcast. It's just we're talking about this guy or this gal, and and then taking it chronologically, you get the context, you get a lot of background info about what was happening when the movie was happening, and I enjoyed it a lot because I learned a lot about movies and the history of movies through it, and they are both quite knowledgeable people about it. I mean, they tend to geek out a lot, and maybe it's not for everyone their type of banter. I'm used to it now since I've been listening for almost 10 years, like almost throughout the entire thing. Uh, but yeah, I would definitely recommend that one if you are a movie buff. If you like movies. So yeah, I will stick to this one.
Thanks for
It's
the
called blank,
recommendation.
blank check.
Blank check.
Mhm.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for anyone who constantly doubts themselves in music or life?
Not for life, my friend. You need to deal with that on your own time. Yeah, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like that remotely. Uh, for music, though, I would say that look, you tend to hear about imposter syndrome a lot, and it's something that I've never had. And the reason I've never had it is because I was always very confident about what I know about music because I've spent a lot of time studying music and I was very aware of what I didn't know about music. I never felt that I knew more than I actually knew. I always felt if anything, I always felt a little bit under my own actual, like abilities. And I always felt humbled by what other people can do with music, both performance wise and composition wise, and also in the technical stuff like mixing and things like that. Um, but I never felt that I'm not good enough for some because I was always doing 100% of what I was able to do. So I never doubted that in the sense that, this is something that I know. I'm gonna do it as good as I know, and I know that I can do it as good as I know. So I never dealt with that. And I think that the main reason is that I did spend a lot of time studying music, and I was and I what I learned is how you learn something, you
Mm,
know, and how much time it takes to really internalize and be familiar with that and then externalize it by using it in your own stuff. So to me, something that really, really helps is to focus on the learning part instead of focusing on I'm not good enough or I haven't found success or things like that. Just focus on the learning stuff. Because if you're comfortable with what you know and you're aware of what you know and you're sure of it and you have a good grasp of it, then you don't need to deal with any of the other stuff. I feel, I think that's my experience anyway. So that's the advice that I can give. The life stuff, I don't know. What I find about life is that, as you get better to what you do, uh, what you have chosen to do, like if you're better at your job, for example, this helps with life. If you Because you get sort of, kind of a confidence. It's really weird. I don't want to really get into it because I'm not a good person to do that because I've dealt with it in my own awkward ways and lengthy ways. And so I'm not a good person to give advice about
mm,
something like that. Because also everyone's life is different, everyone's life circumstances are different. So I don't know. It's
mm,
very tough. I would say though that there's not a single person that I've met that haven't had problems, in life. I haven't had struggles, haven't had issues to overcome. So in that sense, it's normal. And also, there's not a single person that I've known now that haven't thought about their problems when they were 20 and feel now that these were stupid problems. They seemed like very important at the time. And it's good that they are important. And they are important because the importance of something is not compared to other people's experience, but to your own experience. You know,
mm,
you can sort of put things into perspective by saying, well, other people have more difficult problems. But to you, this is your problem right now, and it is important for you to solve it, and it's holding you back. to some degree. So, you don't need to get into the sort of this comparison state. But I can tell you that, in 10 years it will seem trivial. So, I mean, unless it's, I don't have a home, I don't have food to eat. These stuff are important. These are the important stuff. Uh, Other than that, most things tend to, you will get into deeper shit later on. So, it's like brace yourself. So, everyone that's listening, I mean, I'm not talking to you personally.
That makes me feel better about just my own personal stuff. And I don't know if you saw my website or anything, but I'm currently 20, so it makes me
Yeah,
feel a lot better that I have a lot more time.
yeah. I wrote my first game score when I was 31. And, you know, I had a decent career in video games. Not great, but decent in the sense that I did what I wanted to do and made the money to live from it, which is more than, I've ever thought that would happen. And the most important thing is that I listen to the music that I've written and I'm very proud of it. So, and I know that I'm gonna keep writing. It's not, it sounds like a eulogy in some ways, but I'm not, I still have, years to write music and stuff. But I'm saying that, from the perspective, because when I when I did that, I felt very old and very kind of like this is like all these young people are doing it, and I'm like it's kind of super old. But now it doesn't feel like that. It feels like, whatever, it's like that's when it happened for me, and that's how it is. So I don't know. Yeah, this is they're like kind of weird topics to discuss, but a person that is 20 or is 25 or is even 30 then and feel old, I would say you're not old. First of all, this industry is now old. Like if you see the people that are working in this industry, I mean, young people are constantly getting into it, but people who are 40 and 50, they're game developers, they're making games, they're
Yeah.
composers, they're writing music, so it's not and they're making great stuff even. It's not like they're making, like legacy stuff that are, old-timey and retro. I mean, if anything, I think it's like the 25 and the 30-year-olds that are making the retro stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, to a degree, that's understandable because sometimes it's easier technologically, but it's also, I think younger people tend to have a strong sense of nostalgia is onset early on. It's coming on earlier for some reasons. I mean, not for some reasons. There are reasons. There are material reasons behind that. Society has worked in a way to push us into this. But this is for a very different kind of podcast. So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get it. But yeah, it's fine. I mean, already I've run into a huge tangent on it. But okay, whatever. Yeah. I told you it's going to be easy. I don't shut up. It's very difficult for me to shut up.
It makes my job a lot easier. What are you looking forward to this year?
This year, I'm really looking forward to getting this project done, the podcast that we're working on, this audio drama. This is like the biggest thing for various reasons. Um, I'm really interested in how this sound design for film is going to turn out because I think this is might be a kind of pivotal year in the sense that if I do stick with it and get more jobs, it will be very cool and interesting. And I'm already considering the possibilities of that and sort of like if this is something that I do on a regular basis, I will invest on that in the sense of like, moving out of this home studio and going to like a better space that can accommodate a little bit of larger, monitoring and surround monitoring so we can mix in Atmos and things like that, which I found very interesting, especially when working on film. I mean, even for music to a degree, not exactly to the degree that Apple is imagining it with like the immersive music and the head tracking, which I found completely idiotic, and it's not going to work because it's stupid. But surround sound in music, I mean, it's fun. Okay, like Atmos has been established for a few years now, for quite a few years, and it's the new addition is that it has, sound coming from the top. I mean, they tend to put more speakers, which is also silly, and it's also to sell more speakers because if you have, four speakers in front of you and your back, then you have the full 360. You don't need extra speakers on the side. That's what the Phantom Center is. We don't need it. I understand the center speaker to separate the dialogue and stuff, and that has to do a little bit with mixing and stuff. But for music, you don't really need it. But having something coming from the top, that's actually a cool addition.
Mm.
And this is something that I've talked about. When 5.1 came out, I was like, this is great. And when 7.1 came out, I was like, this is stupid. Why don't you put one speaker on top of me and have that? So I was ahead of the curve back then. But Atmos is more than that in other sense, in technical sense, because it separates elements into uh, beds and how they call it. I blanking out again. Anyway, it's adaptable to any sort of speaker setup. That's the important thing. And so it does fascinate me because I'm sort of like a tech geek in some term. I grew up in front of a computer, so this is kind of interesting to me. Um, so yeah, this might be something that I have put an asterisk on it, and I'm like, if this happens, it might be cool. If I, if I upgrade my setup and have like a proper surround setup here and do things, and then I'm thinking, okay, what if I went back and remixed all the Risk of Rain stuff in for Atmos and did things like that, which might be cool, and write all the new stuff for Atmos. Um, but yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of things that sort of excite me, because I am at this point where I'm so, I mean, I don't want to sound ungrateful or anything, and I've loved writing for the Risk of Rain games, but not having another Risk of Rain in front of me, it's extremely liberating because everything that I do is new and I'm excited by new stuff. Writing my own music, it's new. Writing for a narrative podcast, it's new. Doing sound design for films, it's new. Like all those things are new. So new things are always exciting. So I'm sort of I do feel excited for what's to come, even if it's not. If I'm very well aware that it's not going to be, it's not going to bring me the monetary reward that doing another Risk of Rain would, but it's not what I care about. I care about doing new things and expressing myself in different ways, and you know and to be clear, I have the luxury of not caring about it in the sense that I've done it to the degree that I can sort of fall back to that. I have a little bit of a backing from Risk of Rain streaming and all that stuff. So it's not. I want to be very clear about never underestimate material conditions. You know, you cannot willy-nilly abandon everything and just work for your passion. You need to sort of balance things out because your passion is one thing, but your belly and the food that it requires, it's a different thing. Yeah.
And that's something that also takes time to learn as well. At least in
Yeah.
my experience.
It is something that you need to learn and balance, and it's also a difficult decision to, if someone is getting comfortable doing something that gets them the money, it's also difficult to leave it, to do the thing that might be rewarding otherwise, mentally and psychologically and all that stuff, but you know that you will be leaving money behind in a sort of sense. So it's not easy. And I understand that some people might not be comfortable doing it, you know. But, you know, I mean, I'm not like an old geezer or anything. I still have, plenty of years hopefully ahead of me. But I do tend to think about old age a lot, especially after my daughter was born. And I do the one thing that I fear, and which is something that probably might not make sense to you because you're 10, 20, and might not make sense to a lot of people listening, but I do fear that, I don't want to grow old and regret things that I haven't done. You know,
Mm.
I don't want to grow old and say, well, okay, you made a lot of money doing, 15 Risk of Rain records, but you haven't written your string quartet, or you haven't, done your own album about, talking about your own problems, or you haven't written, something. So I am now at this point in my life where I can understand that burden much better than when I was young and I felt I have so much time to, to do all these things. And now you suddenly realize, well, time sort of passes by quite quickly after a point, And the reality of time is that it accelerates all the time as you're getting older. Years go by faster. And when, especially during the last, let's say, three to 4 years, when I had all the Risk of Rain projects, uh, one after the other, it was scary to look at my calendar and have entire years planned into it. Because when you say, okay, these 4 weeks I'm gonna write these couple of pieces, then this week I'm mixing it, this other week I'm sort of delivering it, and then I'm starting the new one and I'm doing this and this, and then the next DLC will start, and then this and this and this and this and this, and I have these 2 weeks to do vacation and this 1 week to do this, and suddenly you open your calendar and there's an entire year or even further than that planned out, and then what this actually means that these years are gone. You can see them going by because you're like, oh, okay, so this is what it's going to be. You already see them, and this makes them go by like this fast. So facing that was really kind of an eye opener for me. And I felt like, I don't want to go through this so extensively and intensively again immediately. Maybe, take the break, not from working, but doing something that is not so pre-planned and so lengthy and so, sort of eradicating an entire year, because it was scary at some point.
I think I do understand the feeling. I I think the feeling of regretting not doing something, because there's a lot of times where I get scared to do things, but then I always have this voice in my head that tells me that if I'm when I'm older, I might think back to this and regret not doing it just because I was scared.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. And it's a hard thing because it's not something you cannot go back to do it. So, you're these are opportunities that are missed. I mean, to some degree, you might do it later, and there's always, some time to do it later. But you never know what that one time, the what if of it all, what possibilities it would have opened, what paths that might have led you down to, and so, But then again, sometimes it's pointless to think that way. You cannot think that, if I said yes to that gig, this and this and this might happen because you don't know that.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know. Um, but it's hard to not feel regret about some things. So, and to me, it's more about things that when I started thinking about music more seriously and and developing the passion and thinking about it. It was the things that I always said, this is something that I definitely want to do. So if I don't do this, I will feel not like a failure or anything, but it will feel regret, you know.
Hmm.
So there's that. Yeah. Kind of sort of going into a downward spiral now, mood wise. So,
That's
you
all
know,
right. It happens
eh,
sometimes.
I hope people listening not get too moody and kind of. We'll see.
Sometimes I think you have to go there to get better.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sometimes rock bottom, and that's kind of a, like a kicker. I've had it just a couple of times in my life at least. So,
Sorry, can I think for a sec?
sorry,
Can I think for a second?
think.
Yeah.
You can edit it out later on. It's your show.
Also, we're still good on time, right?
Uh, I don't want to stretch it too much, to be honest, because already 2 hours, and I
Okay.
mean, we
Yeah.
can have a little bit more, but I still have to go out and run, and then
Yeah.
come home.
Sounds good.
So, all
So a few
right.
more questions.
Yeah. If you have anything, I'm happy to tackle it. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing this, let me do that. Let me open up my Spotify and check out what have I been listening to.
Oh yeah.
And see.
Oh, I also wanted to say I don't know if you're familiar with the games Pizza Tower or Ina.
No, neither
They're
of
they're
those.
pretty newer games, but
Okay.
I became friends with the composers of them from the
Hmm.
show, and they both said to say hi to you.
Okay. I feel bummed now that I don't know them. It's
That's all good.
an unfortunate. Sorry. I mean, I don't have time to play a lot, so it's like
Yeah.
listen, looking at my most recent things that I've listened to on Spotify. So I listened to an album yesterday. I've listened to Gently Disturbed by Avishai Cohen. I
Mm,
listened to the Beatles a lot. I listened to a lot of Star Wars because the re-release of Revenge of the Sith is out in theaters, and I went and saw it. So I kind of got into that mood. And also because yeah, John Williams is really old, and I don't know how many years we're gonna have him kicking around and writing music. So I'm sort of mentally preparing myself for the
mm,
possibility that we listen to his last scores. Um, I don't know, new rendition of Shostakovich's cello concertos by Yo-Yo Ma. Uh, I've listened to Rush, a lot of Rush albums, just because I got into a mood. And that was a tangent because I was listening to the new Dream Theater album, and then I was listening to interviews about it, and they were talking about their influences from Rush in the early days of when Dream Theater got together. And I was like, I used to listen to Rush when I was younger, and so I kind of sort of went back and re-listened to these albums, and that was a cool thing. For some reason, I'm listening to Scorpions, like old albums from Scorpions. I don't know how that came by. Probably, I think I listened to one of their songs on the radio and got me in the mood. Was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan because
mm.
I saw the movie and kind
Yeah, it
of
was
got me
great.
into the mood to sort of listen a few of the albums like properly because I was more like a greatest hits kind of guy when it comes to Dylan. Uh, I don't know. Have the Sims original soundtrack I've listened to a
Nice.
bit, which is like a cool fun thing. The Severance soundtrack
Oh,
from the TV show, which is Theodore Shapiro. That show has a lot of great music. I mean, this main theme has a lot of variations and stuff, but it's cool. I was listening to some classic jazz from Coltrane, Jarrett, Miles Davis. Sort of went back to reacquaint myself with that music a little bit because Jazz is sort of like my blind spot in a way. I mean, I've listened to my fair share, but not very deep into it. So I don't know. There's always room for me uh, to get back to that. Oh, okay. So for example, I think one of my favorite albums is here is from a piano player, a pianist called Tigran Hamasyan, and he's Armenian. And
Hmm.
he released this album that's called "The Eternal Bird." Oh, sorry, that's a single. "The Bird of a Thousand Voices." "The Bird of a Thousand Voices," and that's a very peculiar album because some people have described it as gent without guitars. I think I understand where this comes from, but there's way much more to it than that. And this album has a lot of like traditional Armenian influences, and essentially sort of taking a fairy tale and is putting it to music. Um, but this is a very interesting album. It's like the complex time signatures and stuff are through the roof. There's like insanity going on. The players in the album, they're mad. There are things happening that are really complex.
Hmm.
And, the I love how he has, and there's gent without guitars in the sense that he plays a lot of piano with heavy distortion, and there's like a lot of like really heavy stuff going on. But there's also some stuff that are like more open, and there's very melodic stuff and weird melodies that are happening because of the complex time signatures and the uh, Eastern, Middle Eastern influences and stuff. So that's an album that I would strongly recommend, but it is a hard listen. It's not if you're not familiar with like complex music, this requires a lot of you, you know. So it's not a pop album that you can put and be
Hmm.
like, okay, this is the verse and this is the chorus and it's super catchy and I'm like grooving and I'm like, no, I'm getting it immediately. But if you like to hear something that's really cool and interesting and very fresh in the sense that it's the 2024 album, then I would say Tigran Hamasyan, The Bird of a Thousand Voices. It's an interesting listen, at the very least, you know. So yeah,
Thanks for the recommendations.
yeah, no problem.
Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up for the episode, if you're cool with
Okay,
that.
that's fine. I think we had a nice talk.
Yeah, I had a lot of
Uh,
fun.
yeah,
And yeah, so for anyone listening, you can find Chris's work on all major streaming platforms such as Spotify, Bandcamp, YouTube, all that fun stuff.
if I may, a
Yeah.
lot of people ask me, like, I will repost some guy is getting a vinyl, and I'm, reposting their story. There's hasn't been a single case where I reposted a story and somebody hasn't asked me, where can I get that? First of all, like fucking Google it. Like it's easy. So don't ask me where can I get this. It's like we're living in 2025. Just Google Chris Christodoulou vinyl, and I bet you will find it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like you can get it pretty much everywhere in the sense that I mean, Black Screen Records is the guys who produce my vinyls, and you can get it at their store directly. But we are also sending it to, retailers and stuff. So if you're in the US, you might want to find a retailer in the US because shipping will be cheaper. If you're, I don't know, in India, you might want to find another retailer. If you're in Japan, if you weren't in whatever, But, you know, it's that at this point, I think most of the stuff are available. So if you want, you have like a physical vinyl. And I can tell you that the latest one for Seekers of the Storm that we did is like I'm sorry.
All good.
I've never done it, but like literally, but they're freshly arrived, as you can see.
We got the
They've
unboxing.
Yeah, they have been here just for a few days. I have like a pile sitting next to me. But look, I mean, this is the cover and all, which is it's amazing by Daniele Giardini, who has done the other ones. But look at this
Oh,
thing.
that's beautiful.
Look at it.
I would
Come
hang that
on.
up on a wall.
Like this is the best one we've done. Literally the best one. Look at it. It's I mean, I'm super proud of it.
You could hang
Daniele
that on a
has
wall.
outdid himself on this one. So, if you like it, just Google. Just Google and get there. I mean, Bing it. Duck, duck, go it. Ask ChatGPT if you want to ask ChatGPT. I don't care. Just, or just go to Black Screen Records and get it there.
Awesome.
But yeah, okay. So I did my shameless plug. Isn't this what these shows are for? I mean, you know, I,
Sometimes.
I'm not gonna feel uncomfortable for doing it. It's
Yeah.
how I make my living.
And I love sharing people's work with other people. It's fun. Well, anyways, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you could learn something. And thanks, Chris, for joining me. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, and yeah, thanks definitely everyone for listening, and I hope you get something out of this, and yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'll see you on my social media and whatever. All right.
We love you guys. Have a good day, everyone.